When I was working out in the field in the summertime, one of the most common questions I would get is, why isn't my air conditioner blowing cold air? Whenever that happens, you really want to start with, is it actually running? There's really two different main causes to not have cold air. If you go outside and the unit is not running at all, I'll take you down one pathway. If you walk outside and your unit is operating, we're going to look at a few different things. Let's start with, my outdoor unit is not on at all. If your outdoor unit is not on at all, it is possible that you don't have power. You got to have high voltage and you got to have low voltage. Now, we would always recommend having a certified licensed technician check for voltage, but there are a few simple things that you can do. Check your breaker, make sure it's not tripped. If the breaker is tripped, it'll either be in the middle or to the other side. If the breaker's tripped, you're not going to have power and you need to check on that. At the same time, you can walk inside to your thermostat, make sure that the screen is on. If the screen is blank, that means you lost power and you don't have any low voltage. Some thermostats have a battery, and it simply could be as easy as the battery's gone dead. Go ahead, pop the cover off, take a look. If the battery looks corroded, or even if you don't remember the last time you replaced it, just pop some new batteries in there and see if that helps. At that point, I would not recommend taking the panel off if you are the homeowner, but once your service technician has come out, what you're going to want him to do is take that cover off, get his meter out, and check for voltage. On most air conditioner systems, it's really simple outside. You have a contactor and a capacitor, and that's really the two main parts you're going to want to check. That contactor should be pulled in. It should be closed. If it's not closed, the outdoor unit does not know that it needs to be running. And if it doesn't know it needs to be running, then it won't be on. If you do look and you see that the contactor is pulled closed, have your technician check for voltage. The outdoor unit runs off of 208 or 240 volts. He should check from L1 to L2, or you may see it labeled as T1 and T2, depending on the orientation of the contactor, and there should be 208 or 240 volts there. If you don't have voltage, work your way back to the breaker. Figure out why there's no power. If you are at the point where your technician has checked, the contactor is closed, you've got voltage, but the system's still not running, it could be that capacitor that's the problem. The capacitor helps both motors start and run. So if you have a bad capacitor, the system will not operate. An easy way visually to see if you have a bad capacitor is to see if it's bulged on the top. A lot of times when they go bad, it'll actually bulge out. You don't even have to check it. You'll be able to just see that it's gone bad. Of course, sometimes when they go bad, they do stay flat, and that's where you're going to want to have your technician check that for the microfarads of the capacitor. Once again, you got to be careful because capacitors do store and discharge voltage, so make sure your technician is discharging the capacitor before he checks it. If the capacitor tests good and you have power and the outdoor unit is still not running, it's most likely your motors that have gone bad. At that point, your technician should be able to check the motors to see if there's any problems with them. Other than that, that's pretty much the most common things you'll see on the outdoor unit. There are some fancier systems that do have circuit boards and are a little bit more high technology. If you do have a system like that, you are going to have to check to make sure that you have no blown fuses, that you have low voltage. Your technician's going to want to inspect the board for any burn marks or scorch marks, things like that. But if you have power and you have a good capacitor, that outdoor unit should be running. And like I said, if the outdoor unit isn't running, you definitely won't have cold air. That's kind of one option for why I don't have cold air. The other is my outdoor unit is operating, it's running, there's no problems there, but I'm still not getting cold air. When that happens, it's either going to be an airflow issue or a refrigerant issue. The refrigerant is what's inside your system that actually absorbs the heat out of your house and then rejects that heat outside. So if we don't have proper refrigerant flow, meaning we don't have enough refrigerant, or you have a clog in your system, or you don't have proper airflow, you could not get cold air coming through your house. If you have refrigerant issues, there's really two main things that will cause that internally. You could have a leak in the system, meaning you're low on refrigerant. If you don't have enough refrigerant in the system, you won't have enough capacity to absorb heat. So the system might be running, you might even feel refrigerant flowing through the line set, but you don't have enough of it, so you won't be able to absorb all the heat that you need. If you actually get low enough on charge, what also can happen is your coil can freeze up. You'll actually, if it gets real bad, be able to see the lines that go into the system will actually have ice on them. It doesn't always happen if you catch it soon enough, so what you may need to do is pop the door off your evaporator coil, make sure you've turned the power off, and you can take a look in there and see if there's any ice on the coil. If there is ice on the coil, you're going to need to melt that 100% before your technician can check the refrigerant charge. If the technician does determine that you're low on charge, you're going to want to make sure he or she does a leak search on the system. The system does not burn or consume refrigerant. It does not need to be topped off once a year. That is a common myth that you'll hear technicians say. If it is low, there is a leak somewhere. You have lost that refrigerant. While you are allowed to simply add refrigerant and keep the system limping along for another year, we would always recommend actually doing a leak search, finding the source of the leak, and fixing it so you don't have this problem in the future. If your technician has checked the system, it's not low on charge, it could be an airflow issue. It could be something as simple as you have a really dirty filter, you have a really dirty coil, whether that's inside or outside. HVAC equipment should be cleaned and maintained twice a year, once in the summertime for the cooling and once in the wintertime for the heating. If you have a system that is blocked up with dirt, you will not get proper airflow. And the air is how we actually move the heat that we've absorbed throughout the house. So if we're not moving that air, you will notice that the air is not going to be as cold. And that's really the main reasons why your system is not going to be having cold air coming out. Option 1, the outdoor unit's just not running. Option 2, it's running, but you either don't have enough airflow, or you don't have enough refrigerant, or you have a refrigerant issue. At that point, your service technician would be able to tell you the best option. What I would tell you is that if your system is older than 10 years, it's going to be outside of its parts manufacturer warranty, and we would most likely recommend replacing the system. We can always repair it, but once you're out of that parts warranty, it's going to get really expensive. If you do need to replace your system, you can come to our website. We have lots of good options and equipment that you guys could look at, and we'd be more than happy to help you out.